So not all founders wear hoodies and chase unicorns.
Curiosity was the number one thing. I was always curious how things work, how planes fly, could be anything.
A man who doesn't chase trends, he builds foundations. But what was the fire which led you towards the entrepreneurial path?
I think it was fear of going wrong in another job.
Some build empires with grit, instinct, and no room for cliches. Everybody has that a moment which changes everything for you.
One boss fired me. I think there was just an ego tussle. Second job I went into, the company went bankrupt. And the third one I got extremely bored in.
There's some sort of madness which is jumping off the cliff.
Subha Sabji Wala is also an entrepreneur. He gets up at 4 in the morning, goes to a mandi, buys stuff, sells it to you at whatever margin he makes. There has to be madness to an entrepreneur.
Correct. When you're building something, that feeling is equal, right? You're actually jumping off the cliff every day.
Pretty much. You don't know what's next.
मुझे लगता है फेलियर एक ऐसी चीज है जो सिर्फ आपकी है. सक्सेस सबका हो सकता है, but फेलियर सिर्फ आपका है. Right? Thought process behind it, please. Today on the Addicted Show, we are joined by someone who's not just seen the startup roller coaster. He has ridden it, fixed it, scaled it, and jumped right back into it for another round. Meet Vikul Chander, a man who doesn't chase trends. He builds foundations. He's here to talk about startup culture, the ugly truth behind social media success stories, and why failure is not the opposite of success. It's the proof you tried. If you're someone who's building, breaking, and rebuilding, this one's for you. Because as Vikul says, I just love making things happen. Let's welcome the relentless, the real, the remarkably grounded Vikul Chander. So first of all, very warm welcome to the show, Vikul. I'm grateful and honored that you have made some time in your calendar to be here. So thank you so much.
My privilege.
All right. So let's rewind a bit, right? Before we go into Alliance Galore and your current company B2B, we would want our audience to know who is Vikul Chander. So maybe if you can just share something about yourself.
Vikul Chander. Vikul Chander has always been a very naughty and curious man. And that's something that helped me along the way. You realize that much later. However, if I've been passionate about something, I've been extremely disciplined in that manner. That's really who I've been. Curiosity was the number one thing. I was always curious how things work, how planes fly, could be anything. But I think that's really who I am. And I'm loyal to what I'm passionate about, always.
So I'm like, what was the... So like you said, you're passionate and you're driven by creativity, right? Of course, two founding pillars of your personality maybe, right? But what was the fire which led you towards the entrepreneurial path?
No fire. I think it was fear of going wrong in another job. A couple of jobs went wrong. And I think that led me into believing that maybe business is something I would want to try out. I'd already, in a little bit of a snippet, already tried out a few jobs, internships. I was lucky to be working with a lot of good corporates. But yeah, I think more of going wrong so that fire came later.
Yeah. But then, I'm pretty sure everybody has that a moment, right, which changes everything for you. So maybe, if you could share, was it some boardroom talk or maybe a particular job failure which actually shaped you as a person?
A little bit of everything. There were job failures. There was boredom that came about in a job where I was actually doing well in a large corporate. I think a little bit of everything led me. I think this was my destined path. And if I really take my personality into what I eventually did, it brought out the best thing in me.
But then I know it seems like you're a man of few words, but of course, since you're sitting in a podcast, we would want more, more story around it. Maybe something. I know there's amalgamation of a lot of things which came into play, a lot of forces of nature leading you into this direction.
Yeah.
But there has to be. Okay, let's say we'll talk about three key milestones of your career till now. What would that?
Let me get back into your earlier question.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, it was fear of going wrong again. I had some short stints. So one boss fired me, for example, right? I think there was just an ego tussle. The second job I went into, the company went bankrupt.
Oh,
Right? And the third one, I got extremely bored in. Right? I was doing really well. I was their top performer in my first season itself, but I got extremely bored and I left it. A lot of people that time would have thought he's crazy. I mean, he's doing well, going by the script, did my MBA, did my, just got into jobs. What is next? Shadi kar lo, bacche kar lo. That I was going by the script. So a lot of people would have that point thought he's a little crazy. What is he doing? But I think that calling was there. Like this isn't satisfying me enough. I left it thinking maybe let me see where life takes me. And yeah, I just stayed true to myself throughout. That's really what happened.
I'm like, it sounds like, you're working on the principles of the saying what Steve Jobs said. He once said, you have to be really mad about or believe in something to actually create something, right? So maybe
Every entrepreneur has a madness to it. And it's not only people who've done well in, it's not only the corporate world. See, Subha Sabji Wala is also an entrepreneur.
correct.
He gets up at 4 in the morning, goes to a mandi, buys stuff, sells it to you at whatever margin he makes. There has to be madness to an entrepreneur. Secondly, I also feel the team that an entrepreneur has at the beginning, the startup team has to be equally mad with him. There has to be madness. There has to be some belief. Lot of time in the beginning. Baad mein to, everyone becomes a hero. Right? I'm sitting in this podcast because I must have done something right. I wouldn't have been sitting here 15, 16 years back when I had just started my journey. At that point, no one wants to listen to you. But the first set of believers are equally mad with you, right? And then you get into that journey. The madness has to persist to believe because a lot of people come around, tell you what you're doing is wrong. First, usually when you go off the script, again, what I told you, कॉलेज करो, शादी करो,
Corporate नौकरी
नौकरी
करो।
करो, सब कुछ करो,
जी।
दो बच्चे पैदा करो, जिंदगी. So the minute you go off the script, you're already labeled mad. Now, and when your script is like mine, I have so much difficulty explaining in what I done in life. I mean, it's not the most easy thing to explain. Oh, the business I got into. So the madness, yes, in all entrepreneurs you'll see it.
But I'm like, I understand the madness, right? I'm like, there's some sort of madness which is jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
And and I think when you're on the entrepreneur path or when you're building something, that feeling is equal, right? You're actually jumping off the cliff every day. Is that correct?
Oh, pretty much. You don't know what's next. You are, at a very early stage in your company, you become, as and when more and more employees start joining you, you become responsible for their households running,
Correct.
right? I mean, anyone in a corporate world would be thinking, let's say someone's working with a big bank or a big IT firm. They're getting their salaries. Their days are running fine. They know 30th ko ting आवाज आएगी, salary आ गई. When you're a small company and the first set of believers again in you, you become responsible for them. You are as responsible for them as you are for your own household, right? It takes your family also, your family, your friends to believe in you to go through that journey. Most business owners don't make money on day one. It takes a while. You have to be prepared for that, right? You have to be prepared for your employees obviously getting their salaries on time. You need them. You're nothing without a team, right? So, yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of believers, there's a lot of anti people, right? The people who would say, "Oh, ye nahi chalega," right? And of course, you might have encountered, and you might be seeing every time you open up with a new product line or a new idea which comes into it. How do you navigate through that landscape on day-to-day basis? How do you clear your mind?
The clarity has to be in you.
Okay.
If you believe in something, if something's driving you towards that belief, I think, I mean, yes, I wouldn't say be stupid about it. See the signs, go to the right set of people, ask the right questions. So let's say the entrepreneur is the business owner is more sales driven. He's the one who's doing the sales. If he gets a lot of nays right in the beginning, I think that's a red flag. You should know what might not work. People from outside this entire ecosystem will come and tell you, this is not going to work. This is not going to last. And I think every entrepreneur would have gone through that. Someone not believing in their ideas. I mean, you look at the most popular ones. There are stories of so many of them having gone to 50, 60 investors before someone believed in them, right? But there'll always be more people telling you this won't work than the ones who actually believe in you. I don't know. Maybe they don't want it to work. I don't know what it is. But I think if you're still going in the same direction, if something's leading you there, make sure you get it out of your system. Make sure you go all the way. There is no half-hearted work in an entrepreneur's life. It's everything. So, for example, a lot of entrepreneurs were like, "Why are you working on a Saturday? Why are you working on a Sunday?" काम तो आप ही को करना है बॉस. संडे को कर लो या मंडे को कर लो. छुट्टी पे करना है कर लो. I mean, I don't remember when I took a vacation without getting on my mails first thing in the morning or checking my phone. From a BlackBerry era to WhatsApps to everything, you want to make sure everything is in order. That it's my company, Alliances Galore, was as much my baby as my actual child is. So, I mean, go along the journey and just follow your path. You have to keep believing in yourself. And also, a lot of entrepreneurs, look, you hear of startups winding up all the time. You also have to understand that certain entrepreneurs have to be real with themselves, cut their losses, know when is the right time to call it quits. If it's not working, whether it's the idea or the business altogether. So a lot of companies went into absolute free fall because they didn't know when to stop.
So there's a lot of, like you said, the clarity of thought or clarity of the vision you have, right? So mostly what happens everywhere, especially in the startup culture, is that it's always about millions in scale, or maybe the exits or the headlines and everything. But there's always a version of you which is just always figuring it out, right? And I think I respect that version of oneself. And do you think in this journey throughout, have you lost the touch to yourself, or has it become more strengthened with day-to-day operations? How when you're scaling up? I mean, when you start out, there's a different fire, right? And when you see your baby growing, of course, the love doesn't diminish; it actually increases.
It increases.
Right? But then the challenges, of course, are different. The different scale to all it. But then, do you get a moment of where you sit down and say like, "Wow, what I've done," or you it's like every time it's like, "Shit, that's where I wanted to be. I haven't met those targets." So, what is this a constant conflict?
It's like when you start going out to a gym, right? You start working on yourself every day. It's not the first day you go and you see a six pack.
Yeah.
I mean, all these people who are aspiring to have a six pack. The first day you go, you start working out. 15 days down the line, 30 days down the line, with the right trainer and advice, you'll probably start seeing a few changes in your body. Business is like that, right? You keep growing. And again, once these people see how their bodies have become, the same way a business, when you see that it's succeeding, the euphoria starts driving you. You don't really realize. You are then on auto mode. I mean, I've gone to Bombay at 5 in the morning, taken 2 a.m. flights back because, at that point, there wasn't enough money for a hotel room. So maximized the full day, took the first flight out. 2 a.m. there used to be an erstwhile airline. They used to have a flight. I used to always come back on that flight. Absolutely broken through the day. I used to give myself the privilege of turning up 1 hour later next day. But the euphoria, and the whole joy of seeing something succeed starts driving you. You're on auto mode. No one needs to motivate you. Then you're so driven. That's how a story goes.
But now in this ecosystem of yours, right, the other people, of course, your team, like you said, you have always given relevance to your team, your family, and everybody. How do you get them sync with your vision? Does it happen as a byproduct, or is this something you also have to work on it at the sidelines?
It's a very difficult task to get people to believe in you, especially if you're doing an idea out of the ordinary.
Correct.
I mean, to be very honest here, there wasn't a vision. There was a vision to start, but most businesses, and you can name any business here. I don't want to be name dropping a lot today, but most businesses have pivoted many times over. The vision started with something. So it's hard to get people's buy-in.
Correct.
But when you start seeing success is when people start buying into your ideas more. So the first 10 employees are difficult to hire, for example. The next 30 are not going to be that difficult because the first 10 become your brand ambassadors slowly.
True.
So what are those 30 going to do? Even when they come into an interview, they'll find someone to have a conversation and be like, नौकरी अच्छी चल रही है, बॉस खड़ूस है, टाइम पे सैलरी आता है. We encourage those conversations. If you ask a lot of people, I was like, do your due diligence and make sure, there are certain principles we stand for. We might have gone wrong with a lot of employees. There were over 150 employees when Alliances Galore got sold. But we made sure we were very transparent with them at all times.
But I'm like, of course, we'll get to the Lions Globe part of it. But I'm curious right now, so I'm just asking. Like you said, from a Lions Globe to B2B, right now you're into that space, right? So, how difficult it is to let go? You sold it out, or maybe you saw a saturation point, or maybe you moved on to a next bigger challenge or bigger thing. Was it that sort of a thing, or?
Alliances Galore being sold was it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. I mean, when I signed those documents, I wish someone had told me all along to not get so attached. Well, actually not. I mean, my attachment is what kept driving me, right? But in my current avatar, I tell founders to make sure, keep that little detachment. You'll need it, especially if you're looking for an exit. If you're looking to run it as a business, like, for example, you're running a retail store, you want to run it as a business throughout, there's no problem. I mean, stay attached to it, go to your workplace in the morning, come back in the evening, that's all you'll think of. That's absolutely fine. But if there is a story of an exit, that little detachment has to come. Has that detachment happened even today? I mean, no. I don't think it will ever not be a part of me, that company. I mean, it's what made me.
Correct.
It's the reason why I'm here. You're talking to me about that story. I must have done something right. But it's always been a part of me. It'll always remain a part of me.
I mean, after all, it was your brainchild, right? I'm like,
It's my child.
Yeah.
It was my first child.
And I'm sure you'll have plenty. I'm like, from the entrepreneur perspective,
But it'll never be the same. I'll be honest with you. That first child, the first company I built, all those moments, every now and then I meet employees, ex-employees, and we speak fondly of it. They're a little more open with me now. They'll tell me, you were wrong here. You scolded me there. You did that. But I don't think it'll ever cease to be not to be a part of me, and I like it that way. You have to have learnings as well from that journey. There are a lot of learnings I incorporated to perhaps have a bigger future. But now I think it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same with the future companies.
Are you kind of a person, like you said, it depends on your mindset, whether you want to run it as a business throughout your life, or you're looking for an exit every now and then, right? Maybe build something, create something, and just hand it over to somebody, and okay, you can take it forward. I'll move on to the next thing. I'll create something next, right? Of course, I think now you're in that zone where you would want to continue to keep creating, right? Or maybe creating those foundations.
You can't have a template in mind.
Okay.
Most founders cannot have a template in mind. You have to go with the flow. We didn't build an organization to sell. I come from an ecosystem where things were bought for 6 rupees or 7 rupees, sold for 10 rupees. I mean, the world in the middle had kind of pivoted to buying for 10 rupees and selling for 7 rupees,
Yeah.
right? A lot of examples over there. So I came from a very traditional mindset. I didn't build a business to sell, to exit. I built a business to sustain. Alongside, somewhere, I think we built a very strong foundation built on very simple logic. You don't realize at that point what you're building, right? I mean, it's you just build, and you look back and suddenly 3 employees have turned into 100 employees, and these policies and that compliances, everything come in. So I think even in the future, I don't want to have a certain template in mind. If a business is growing, I'll obviously, I mean, you have to be real at a time where you feel, I want to exit because this is the maximum I can take it to. Right? That comes from being real with yourself.
Correct.
Not at a time there, this is where I'll make a lot of money. Yes, obviously that plays a part. But you can't have that template on day one. मैं ना 2 साल में बेच दूंगा इस कंपनी को करके.
Correct.
वो पॉइंट 6 महीने में भी आ सकता है, वो शायद 6 साल तक भी नहीं आएगा. That can change.
But at the same time, I get your point. Like, of course, you always build for sustainability. Matlab, who wants to just
Absolutely.
kind of use and throw all a system? Nahi hai. It's like, right, it's not an item you order from Amazon, use for 2 days and then throw it out. I get it. But then again, one basic question, or what I want to ask is, like, you've talked about the role of team, family, and everybody. But you mentioned earlier, right? For example, if you're a sales kind of oriented man, right? So all the nails and the reference we're talking about, right? So as an entrepreneur, what is the key skill you think? Like, of course, you have to learn every aspect of the business. It's a brainchild. But let's say one entrepreneur is good into finance part of it, and his partner or the co-founder or whatever, one is good into sales, one is good in marketing and everything. But let's say for a single man, how do you get that? Of course, you can get a workforce, a skilled workforce. That's a different thing altogether. But to begin with, how do we go about it? Like,
As quickly as possible, make sure your weaknesses are catered to, right? One, don't be unreal about your weaknesses. If finance is your weakness, make sure you have a strong finance person. Look, all this is possible when you have the budgets to do it. You get a strong finance person, you need money. Let's say there's someone who's very good with technology, doesn't understand how to go about sales. Many examples of these. I met so many people who have built such amazing technology, they don't know how to sell it, right? They will obviously need a co-founder or a support team that is excellent in selling, business development, and maybe even finance. But as quickly as possible, be real with yourself. ये मुझसे नहीं होगा. I need a support team. So that keeps you on your core task. Your core idea came out of your expertise, not out of someone else's expertise. It is impossible that it's come out of someone else's expertise, unless you're just copying an idea,
correct,
right?
Correct.
So, get that support team in a junior form in the beginning if you can't afford it. Co-founder, if you find someone to buy into your idea. I was lucky to have a co-founder who supported me across. I mean, a couple of them along the way, but my weaknesses were catered to right in the beginning.
So I'm like, again, I think that the core theme which is coming out of the entire conversation is that you need to be real about yourself, your weakness, your strength, and just work on it, right?
वेइंग स्केल पे तो चढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. वेट लूज करना है या वेट गेन करना है, जब तक यू डोंट नो व्हाट योर वेट इज, you will never know what your target weight is.
Correct.
So being real with yourself about your environment around, about your circumstances. I can aim to be a billionaire, but I need to know what my limitations are there.
So Vikul, first of all, thank you so much. You've shared about A lot of aspects we touch upon it, but let's go to your basic, your brainchild, Alliance Galore, right? Which is Asia's foremost offer and benefit aggregator. It's an incredible story. So if you can just walk me through about the origin of it, how it was conceived or perceived, or what are the path is.
I was 24 when this idea was conceived. Like I told you earlier in the previous segment also, that it came, like I had a few jobs that didn't work out for me, boredom, failure, fired, everything. I think I started thinking business just to avoid such a situation again. In hindsight, obviously, you can analyze it a lot more. But in that moment, it came out of probably, I feel today, it was more because I didn't want to go through another job. Very simple thing. I was very fascinated by restaurants always on how they functioned. In my family, there was history of hospitality industry. My aunt ran restaurants. So there was fascination. Um, And personally, I believed that there should be perhaps a discount card that got you access to the best restaurants. So back in the day, at that point, there weren't really products like what we created. Uh, there were small itsy bitsy attempts that were made, but no one who really put their heart to it. I personally got into the list. These are the restaurants I want because these are the restaurants I want to visit. So I want them giving a discount on this card. And if the best ones are giving it, only then will people buy this product. So it started off as a B2C company. Um, Invariably, it had a pivot. I mean, we probably did some incredible work to be discovered, and that in eventually turned into a B2B2C journey. And we kept it simple. We kept curating list of restaurants we believed were good, and that's really how it all started. Now, most founders actually will tell you a story about the origin of an idea was where they thought something was missing. Whatever they say things like, we want to fill that gap, or whatever term they end up using for
Find
it.
a problem and then
Find a problem,
solution.
plug a hole, fill the gap, all those things. It came from a moment where they realized it. Right? I've been in conversations. I've been lucky enough to be in forums with a lot of founders. There are two kinds that I've primarily come across. One who just saw a market trend and copied it and probably did a better job out of it. Right? There are many such examples again. Second is someone who was in a moment saying, this should be there, and then just pursued it. The second was me. I have more of the second one in me, where I thought this can become something big. And as a 24-year-old, you think in a very simple way, and you're trying to put together ingredients to the best of your ability, right? Obviously, again, going back to that script, a lot of people don't believe that 24-year-olds can do business. There are some success stories, but far and few, obviously. So at that point, people don't take you very seriously. It takes a while, to get an appointment. You just, you haven't grade enough for them to get their attention. You haven't gone through enough experience to get their attention. So that takes a while. It takes a while for people to start believing in you. But yes, the origin of the idea came out of a very simple thinking. I think this card will do well. It was a physical form of an app. Obviously, many apps have been made now. That time there weren't any. So that's really how the idea came about.
But it must have been very difficult, right? Of course, the idea, it was there to be plugged, right? And you itsy bitsy attempts were made. But then, to have that physical card, and this is talking about an era where maybe 10 years back, 12 years, 20 years?
2009.
2009. So back then, I think maybe the purchasing power was also not there. Information was less. Awareness, of course, right? People didn't have. And people maybe were hesitant. I'm like in the Indian market, maybe, people go into the traditional thinking, cash is rich, right? Now the entire mindset has changed from cash to credit, right? So how difficult it was to sustain during that period? I mean,
I think the one advantage was less competition back
of
then,
course.
right?
Yeah.
So we did manage to sell pretty well to the best of our ability. But we were lucky in our timing. That original business probably lasted just a couple of years. It pivoted very quickly to working with the credit cards that you're talking about. So we became a latch on to credit cards. And that's where our pivot came. And that's where our game changed. We had to kill the first idea. I mean, it almost died a natural death, right? There was no point in focusing on that anymore. That gave us the stepping stone, but we were able to adapt to the changing trends at that point. And I'm glad we did.
So I'm like, so you started from curating deals with restaurant at a granular level, I would say.
Yeah.
And then you started consolidating with merchants across, right? So I'm like, it's a complete shift, right? And you've kind of across 20 odd countries, if I'm not wrong.
Over 20 countries eventually.
Eventually,
Yeah.
like you've scaled it into it. So I'm like, it's not just scale. I'm like, it's incredible. I'm like, scale hota hai. I'm like, even a scale, basic scale is a small scale, right? And scale is something which is measurable. And this is not actually measurable. It is like it. I'm not sure if there's some sort of a measurable or quantifiable instrument or a thing is also there. So how moving from, okay, let's say you started from Indian market, you started seeing success in everything, right? What made you pivot into the international landscape?
Opportunities were knocking.
Okay.
You know, we said, if we can do this here, why not? I mean, I don't really remember a single moment where I thought I want to go outside India and try and do this. I think, look, when you're working with banks, and especially the MNC banks and a lot of networks that we worked with, you knew they were doing this business outside. So sometimes when I used to study the literature that they were publishing outside, I wasn't convinced that they were doing the best possible job. I thought our systems were fantastic. I thought there is something we can put on the platter for them to see if it'll work out. And we just gave it a shot, and it worked. It obviously didn't work in, the first shot didn't fire. It took us a couple of attempts, but I think the first attempt told us there is an opportunity. Why not? Again, a very organic way of working. We had got most of the Indian market, and hence it was important for us to at least attempt and to test waters overseas and see how it would work out for us.
And then while you were doing it, I'm like, did you find a natural synergy in your line of work, or were there more obstacles you had to face? Of course, there were obstacles, right?
When you go international, the culture completely changes. They work in a different way. For example, I did a lot of work in Singapore. I was spending so much time over there. In India, if you are able to beat the price of the other vendor, you're very likely to get that business. In Singapore, that's not going to happen. Quality is extremely important for them, right? You have to produce something far more superior to what the other vendor has been doing, and then maybe price it a little lower and sell it. So it was very difficult adapting to different cultures, to understand what language to speak. Everyone's always on time. In Singapore, 5 minutes before the meeting, everyone's waiting outside the meeting room. Small things you have to notice and localize as much as possible when you are going international with your business.
But then when you talk about culture, as an Indian company, did you get that some sort of a support, or it was just quality? I'm like, they're always focused on the quality, discipline, and then of course the price point is important, and like you said, localization of it. So apart from that, was there anything else?
Or support? Did we get support in Singapore?
Singapore, yeah.
There were people.
Okay.
Obviously, we were referred from banks within India to them. There were people who guided us on what would work, what would not. I mean, you can't survive without those mentors. You can't just go into a country and say, I'm going to own this country, right? There were enough people telling us the right noises to make. They gave us a sense of the culture. I think my first 2 trips was just to understand the culture of how that country works. And then invariably other countries that we went into.
Like you said, I'm like the first shots were fired. So I think like founders, they don't, kind of they lead. They don't fire shots, or they don't have bullets. They lead or they build with lead. I would say, right? Is that correct? Like one merchant at a time, one product at a time, one market at a time, one nation at a time.
Yes.
And this is really good. I'm like, in a way, I'm like, what I feel good about is like when you started it out, right? So you didn't just scale it, you created like an infrastructure. And I'm pretty sure that infrastructure a lot of people have used kind of like you said, replicated, people replicate trends. And I'm sure other founders have come into this market, other companies have come into the market and try to replicate your model.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, some people from within our organization also try to replicate that model and start this business. But it's a good sign. When people are replicating your model, I think it's a good sign. It's if you're alone in the ecosystem, it's not a good place to be. You'd rather be part of a larger ecosystem than to own the ecosystem by yourself, because the need is created by everyone. See, 3 people knocking on the doors of a client will make them feel maybe I need to do this. Right? Yes. There are 3 companies doing the same thing. If you're alone doing it, they'll probably not take you seriously enough. So I've always believed when competition comes up, that means you're doing something right. So let's say a restaurant's running well in a particular market, and 3 more restaurants come up. That entire area becomes a focus point.
Becomes a hub in itself.
It becomes a hub in itself. Yeah. People start going for the options. So the first restaurant that came up over there is usually going to be a beneficiary if they sustained their business, if they sustained their quality. It's always good for more. That means that restaurant chose the correct place to mushroom itself. That's what I've always believed. Yes, it's always healthy for more businesses to come up in the same ecosystem.
I totally agree, right? And in a way, it's a chain reaction which you have started, right? So it's a good thing. Not that I've spoken to a lot of founders or young entrepreneurs, but I feel like a lot of people these days get very knocked down with competition. If they're doing something and somebody picks up their idea, start replicating it, they get very disheartened. I'm like, but looking at your story, and you started very young, so I'm like, what was this mindset change is required if somebody has to do the same thing today?
If you maintain your quality and you keep delivering, I don't think you have to worry. Look, they'll take away a little bit of your business. You can open a dhaba next to a 5-star. It's not like the dhaba is not going to get some of the business, right?
Correct.
So I think if your product offering is, or your service, whatever you're offering, is good enough, in the long run, you won't have to worry. But if your competition creeps up and they're doing a better job, that's when you have to worry. You have to always remain ahead of the game. You and me can name, you have a phone in your hand, I have a phone in my hand. There are companies that existed 10 years back that were manufacturing phones, and those were the default phones in our hands. They're no longer even in the fray, right?
Correct.
Probably, whether they pivoted as a strategy, they didn't believe in the long-term game, whatever was the reason behind it, they don't exist. It's not the phone option that people are looking at. Similarly, if you want to sustain your business, you have to stay ahead of the game. No matter what competition comes, people will copy your idea. India में तो business photocopy होना ही होना है, right? आप अच्छा कर रहे हो, everyone. So if you remember that era, everyone wanted to be an MBA. Because everyone wanted to be an MBA.
Yes.
Then everyone wanted to be a pilot because everyone wanted to be a pilot.
Yeah.
Herd mentality, भेड़ चाल, इस देश में तो बहुत है. So be prepared for the competition, but trust yourself. If you're ahead of the game, again, at the cost of sounding repetitive, you won't struggle.
I'm like, I totally agree with this herd mentality. I'm like, even in, I'm like, I think it has to do some bit with our how we brought up also, right? In a way, because schools में भी साथ में you always go into a group, college में भी groups होते हैं, हर जगह, of course, you need people to survive. But then suddenly, one person does something off the script, like you said, he starts becoming an outlier. Stereotype करना शुरू कर देते हैं हम उस बंदे को. So I totally agree. I'm like, that is very important. But now, when you talk about the entire the business, right? We're talking about one thing which I want to understand is like आपने इतने साल से वो बनाया and then you created and then you sold it off and whatever, right? So एक particular day आपके mind में है बिल्कुल जो आपको ऐसे जैसे कहते हैं ना हम we always remember the bad days very quickly, good days फिर भी आप थोड़ा सा sideline कर देते हो in a way. But then any particular bad day while you building it and how did you push through it? But I'm sure मतलब let's say we ran this company for 10 years, you ran this company for 10 years, for example. So 10 साल में एक moment ऐसा आया होगा कि यार छोड़ दे रहा हूँ मैं अब. I don't want to do this anymore. Sometimes ऐसा thought आता है.
छोड़ने का मन नहीं आया था.
अच्छा.
कभी भी नहीं आया. I think COVID was difficult.
Okay.
In what we did as a line of business, COVID was extremely difficult for us. COVID also made me realize how lonely the top man's job is. Because we spent a lot of time ensuring that the employees felt safe. Financially, health-wise, everything, we did our best. I don't want to speak much about what all we did. We were, I think at that point, we were extremely well intended as an organization. But there were times we used to get on calls, not times, I mean, pretty much every day we would get on a call with the entire team, no matter where, in which city they were in. We had teams across the country, across different countries. We would just tell them, we are okay. You don't have to worry. We'll tide through this. I mean, it was my first pandemic too, right? But वो दिलासा मेरे को कोई नहीं दे रहा था.
Correct.
हमें सबको देना पड़ रहा था. You know, the top management, everyone got involved in just making sure everyone's आपकी salary आ जाएगी. We don't have to worry about, we had created a strong enough organization for them not to worry about. We will have business. But under say, I mean, I had many sleepless nights. I think that was the most difficult phase of running this business. Everything else seems minuscule in front of that. Sustaining COVID, our business was not, there were businesses that thrived more during COVID because the businesses were built for such a scenario.
Yeah.
Our business was absolutely reverse of what it needs to be. So more in the offline sector, as we call it, more in the retail shops, restaurants, spas, salons, everything, we were running benefits across. So तो सब बंद पड़ा हुआ था. अगर वो सारा बंद पड़ा हुआ है तो हमारा धंधा कहाँ से आएगा?
Correct.
So I think that is a time I felt extremely lonely. I wish someone just came and told me सब ठीक हो जाएगा. Those were difficult days, but we aced it eventually. We did okay. छोटे pivots उस time भी किए, and we aced it. We came out absolutely okay.
आपने बहुत सही बात बोली. I wanted to ask you that it's very lonely at the top, right? And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's nobody prepared anybody for this event. And then suddenly सब आपके देख रहे हैं कि यार आप बताओ क्या करें next, what next, and you're making up on the go, right? You must be inventing things just to.
Your mind works overtime in such a scenario. Your mind, and I was humble enough to tell a few employees. I said, like certain. Maybe late in the evening when I'm on call with them, I said, "मेरी भी तो पहली pandemic है. I hope last है, but मेरी भी तो पहली pandemic है. I have not been. No one knew such a scenario is going to ever come up where we are just going to be inside homes. Everything is going to be shut. No one was prepared for it. So I think that is a time where your mind starts working overtime. How do I sustain this? You built. 2020. That means I'd already been through 11 years of business. I built something for 11 years and you see it crumbling in front of you. It was a very hard time. But good part is that you sailed through it. Yes.
and now I'm like, you have what do you say, a month.
Stormy waters, but say, yeah.
But now I think, in a way, I'm like this. These situations kind of prepares you for next challenge, also, right? And that's where we'll get to now to your B2B aspect of it, right? Like we're talking about, we'll talk about your the current venture, right? And so there's a very popular line in the movie called Intern, where they say that musicians don't retire; they just stop when there is no music in them, right? And I think there's a lot of music in you. That's why you're passionate, you're driven, you're creatively always, pushing your limits, right? So maybe if you can talk about B2B a bit more, what is it about? How, from a successful exit to this brand new idea came into your head?
I don't know if it's a brand new idea.
Okay.
It's an extension of what I was doing. I think at that point I wasn't keen to start something from the ground up again. There was a different version of me at 24. There was a different version of me at 38 that realized this. I have to do something new now. Ek exit ho gaya. What I realized in those 14 years, and then obviously it starts coming together, is there are many businesses that have been built in such a way that could scale using your network, right? So I built a business keeping in mind, if I can go to a lot of companies and I can find a few of these companies that I feel I can scale up in my network with my expertise, my understanding of how things work, it will fast forward their growth, right?
True.
It can either fast forward their growth or a realization that, look, I'm going the wrong way. Both. It can, it doesn't guarantee success. But one way or the other, I can take them to the right people. Network to ban gaya, 13-14 saal mein, right? And if I'm able to filter the right set of companies today to add them to our portfolio, give them the right support, whether it's in terms of our connects, whether it's capital, whatever it is, you can let that company come to a conclusion on whether it's worth existing or not, right? So you meet companies at different stages. You meet companies that are on the cusp of an IPO or at least planning that way. You're meeting companies to turn them around. I mean, they're on the verge of shutting down. You meet companies that have already gone through a Series A. So different companies, you have a different set of dealings. Their requirements out of you are completely different. But B2B in its soul is something I wish I had. I had everything in small snippets, in buckets here and there, itsy bitsy, but not in a prim and proper manner. Consultants to dekho dher hai. But see, my problem with consultants always has been, and even then when people used to come trying to consult us, was that you've never run a business. I gave you a story of COVID, for example. Tomorrow, all those experiences that I've garnered is something I want to share with founders and tell them this is a roadblock you might hit. How can a consultant who's never run a business, just out of B school, or maybe just a few years of experience, come and tell you how to run a business? They've never run a business. So you know how to do it on a shoestring budget. They don't know how to do it at a shoestring budget. They walk into a cafe and there'll be like the most amazing coffee being served in their cafeteria, etc. They've never seen a shoestring budget, to be bootstrapped completely. So it came out of my own requirements back then, and it just became a very natural part of what I wanted to do in the future. I had the connects. Why not just scale things that already exist rather than betting on a new idea? And you're not guaranteed to make that big. But yeah, I'm betting on a few companies now, and I'm betting on making some of them even bigger than what I created earlier.
As a business philosophy, I understood, and it's a natural synergy or a level up from your the old venture, right? But then, what is the ethos of the entire business, and what exactly the solution you're offering in this?
To the earlier point when we were discussing, no founder has all bases covered, right?
True.
So what we've created is we've created a team of people from different walks of life. Someone who's good at finance, someone who's good at brand, someone who's good at sales, from different walks of life coming together. All these are people who've gone through the grind. They've built companies, they've done something or the other. Them advising the founders. So again, to our earlier point, let's say there is a CTO who's looking to scale up. We do business development advisory. Open the right doors for them. At least try and open the right doors for them. So there's that kind of a ecosystem that we are creating. And let them have a punching bag. Let them come at 10 o'clock at night and call and say, look, this has gone wrong. This deal has completely gone wrong. Or this vendor's problems have happened. Or this legal notice came up. Or that happened. Aajkal compliance ke kitne kaam.
True.
Just keep them calm. Just let them know it'll be okay.
So you create the balance.
Absolutely.
A lot of founders, they build products, but very few are able to build people. And I think with B2B, your mindset is that, right? You're building people along with the product.
Absolutely. The founder is so important, for him to keep aligned with his vision. In the beginning, eventually businesses mushroom into being large corporates and it's not dependent on one founder. But in the beginning, it's all about him. Obviously the team, but it's his vision. Everyone's following. For you to keep that person centered is so important. We speak about days where I wish someone was there to tell me during COVID, this is how to go about it. Many people gave advice, but I don't know if they were in the right place to give me that advice at that point. So it's about keeping a founder centered, let him believe that he has a support system. It's a lot like what mental health is today, right?
True.
There are people who you can speak to, you can call up, you can speak to counselors, there is counseling. People are more open about it. Celebrities are more open about it. Just like that, even founders on their hardest days need a little bit of a support. They need someone for them to listen to.
So in a way, kind of unload, or maybe filter the
and then give them
noise.
solutions.
Yeah.
Not just unloading. It's not just counseling. You have to give them solutions. They need capital, help them with that. They need connects, help them with that. So again, the ecosystem that we've created is support in every aspect. So you analyze what this person is looking for, what is the immediate need, what's the long-term need, and then obviously advise them accordingly.
So in a way, you become a hub where you can give them all sort of information, all sort of connects, and all sort of advices.
We're a leadership extension. Long story short, all of us in this on my company right now have been CEOs or had very high positions. We're a leadership extension team. You hire us. You probably fill in a lot of gaps that we spoke about earlier that these founders don't realize they need in the beginning.
So in a way, we spoke a lot about the support system, right, at the start of the conversation. So let's unpack it a bit, right? So in a way, the support system, which was not, you had to build yourself. Now, in a way, you're giving that support system to them in every aspect of it, right?
Absolutely. If I compare it to Bollywood, if you had your family into this business already, it was faster. We didn't have, at least our company did not have a support system. We built one connect after another. And that can get a little difficult in this day and age. Like I said earlier also, that the competition back then was a little lesser. Lesser people had startups. Today there are startups. You go to Bangalore, there are areas where every floor of a building today has startups. So, this kind of advisory didn't exist back then. It would have been, that's really what we're trying to give out to people.
But honestly speaking, I'm like, nobody has even thought about it, but I think you understand this problem or pain area more truly because you have been in that shoes, right? So
yeah. Look, at different times, you have different people advising you. They all mean well.
Yes.
It's for you to filter what advice to take. And we still, when we put out the advice on a plate today to any of these founders, to their support teams also, whoever we are dealing with in that company, we tell them that, look, this is the flip side of it, and this is the advantage of it. At the end of the day, it's up to them. And we encourage them to take the decisions. We just put all the facts in front of them, all the solutions in front of them. It obviously, it stems from our experiences on what we would have done, right? So that's exactly what we try and do.
My another question from this only conversation is that, so every founder is different, right? And then everybody has their own vision, and this is a generation of founders, I would say, right? There's a way which you've said, like every floor has a different business is starting up. But I think they start very quick and they fade out also even quicker.
Those are the scary stories.
Yeah.
And that discourages other people also. People who last 3 months, 6 months, and they give up on an idea. They fade very quickly. I mean, it takes a while to build a business. It takes a while to build a foundation. I mean, there's this story, right? These overnight success stories are built over 10 years. You only recognize a business when it has become successful. Very few people follow the entire story of that business, of what the downs were. What the ups, obviously, you're seeing now.
Correct.
But there is a long journey that most organizations today have taken. Some have come so close to shutting down and then somehow survived, and today are leaders in whatever they're doing. Again, whatever I'm saying, there are so many examples. I can give a few examples. Like I said, I don't want to name drop, but it's, again, the success stories are spoken about so much on social media. Everyone feels it's so easy to do this.
True.
The journey should be spoken on more. The emphasis should be on how difficult the journey was, if you're willing to take it. So I have a lot of people who come up to me, ask me, oh, I have this business idea. Should I do it? I said, is there fire in you? Is there hunger in you? Is this voice telling you? Businesses aren't built on Excel sheets. Businesses are built here, a combination. If it's saying, go for it. अपने अंदर में जो कीड़ा है कि entrepreneur बनना है, founder बनना है, वो निकालो अगर आया है. No matter what your age is. But only if you're willing to go through XYZ sacrifices. Maybe you'll have to skip some vacations. Maybe you'll have to give up those precious Sundays, Saturdays. Today, you're blaming the company for keeping you in office till 7:30. Tomorrow, you are going to do the same thing with your employees. And you'll stay till 9:30 sometimes. Then work-life balance goes out of the window. So if you're willing to go through that journey and yet maybe not make a buck for 2 years, then, only then, should you take this step.
But then again, my other question, which is, so you come across a lot of people, right? These people, the founders who are coming to you for strategic advice and connections and all that, which B2B offers, right? So now, it's a very tricky question. So of course you can choose to answer or not. Do you, from your own experience in a skill set, do you have that sense or vibe that, okay, this will not work? This business will not see the light of the day? Something of that sort?
I think more than the business idea, I'm trying to gauge the founders in the first meeting. I love founders who don't sway from their vision just because you try and sway them a little bit. You want to know how deeply this person believes in their idea. So my little check is always on that. Whenever I'm speaking to the founders, see if we want to attach ourselves to them. If they don't want to pivot from their ideas, no matter what, I mean, yes, a little bit here and there, they understand this might do better in a different form. But if they are absolutely crystal clear about their ideas, those are the kind of founders you want to work with. More often than not, today, most ideas sound very appealing, right? You look at a show like Shark Tank, most people would say, I'd invest in everything. All these people who filtered and come there, and yet obviously only a few are chosen. And I can imagine all those judges over there, all the investors rather over there, would also be looking at the founder just as much and their passion. Because if you get a passionate founder, someone who's willing to give it everything and believes in an idea and has been breathing that idea, that person is someone you would want to invest your time and money with.
I'm absolutely true. I'm like, if you don't believe it in yourself or your idea, how can you
No one else will.
build? Yeah. But also at the same time, I understand that some founders are, you see that. So it's like I'm not sure it's the right word. Maybe you're vetting them, whether they're the right mix for you, also for your own piece of business, right? Eventually, let's say during the process, let's say now it's onboarding is done, right? Now you're working with them throughout, right? During that period, also there's a lot of ups and downs, of course, which will be part and parcel of your founder's journey. Have you noticed that something which you felt that truly that okay, this will work for your business? It's a done, tried and tested thing, but they're very hard bound or rigid about it. नहीं, मैं adopt नहीं करूँगा इसको.
Of course.
Navigate that landscape. How do you change or influence or maybe guide them? Not influence, maybe guide them.
Let them fail
Okay.
or let them succeed.
Yeah.
What is the guarantee that my advice is the correct one always?
Correct.
Or my team's advice is the correct one always? Eventually, like I said, give them the options, and then it's for them to select whether this is what they want to go with or they have a different set of ideas altogether. So I would say let them decide, empower them, and that should be, most founders should be empowered enough. That's primarily, you can't take away the very reason that they got into doing a business, which is calling the shots, right?
Correct.
Give them the options, let them decide whether they want to do this or not. And going back on the point, whether did we select the right founders? Did we select the right companies? It's a lot like when people come to interview, they're the most passionate selves. Oh, I'll change the fate of your company completely.
Correct.
मैं ये कर दूंगा, वो कर दूंगा. Obviously,
It's a pitch.
You're trying to see through that, right? The CV is beautified. Reference call आपको आएगा तो अच्छा ही बोलना. You all, those references are obviously the ones that have been served to you, are the ones who are going to speak well about you. All that. So in those two meetings, जितना अच्छा आप gauge कर सकते हो कर लो. उसके बाद देखो, in 6 months down the line, the employee turned out to be not as efficient as you thought. Oh, you got to live with it. Let that person go. Cut your losses. I guess. What else can you do? Same with companies. In that moment, you're doing the best analysis you can, given the circumstances, the information that's fed to you, the data that he's feeding to you, the business ideas. But again, you can go wrong.
I think going wrong is not a problem. Not trying is the problem, right?
Absolutely. If you don't try, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Most businesses come out of that mindset, right? You keep trying.
And maybe without naming clients and name dropping anybody, have you seen any business or founder who's almost on the verge of maybe just giving up and just pivoted on a strategic advice?
Many. No, I'm not talking only about my advice. My B2B is still a very young company, young service rather, I would say. But many that have, were on the verge of shutting down, and then one little idea from someone or the other just transformed them. I think when then they didn't give up. While perhaps you could argue that cutting your losses is a good strategy, they didn't give up and they still continue to flourish. Many such examples.
So I understand that. So as of now, you're in the business of giving the most crucial advice. It's a leadership extension of it, right? And what you're seeing these days, right? the kind of people you meet, the founders you meet. There could be young founders also and old founders also. Right? People who have tried and run a couple of businesses, didn't work out, and keep are still trying, right? So, what is the one blind spot you see in young founders these days? Are like,
See, you got to be aware of. I think most businesses, sometimes the best ideas are not the ones that became unicorns or had amazing listings, and not all the companies that are listed or became unicorns were the best ideas. Some businesses, and I've seen such brilliant ideas that have died only because they had a small issue called cash flow management. They couldn't sustain cash. They didn't know how to make sure that cycle is working in their favor. It wasn't the profits that were an issue. It was the cash flow management. They didn't have enough money to pay salaries or rents next month because the billing wasn't done on time or the clients delayed it. Some of the most brilliant ideas have died that death. That's a huge blind spot. Secondly, in this country, specifically, population of 1.4 plus billion people, your ideas are going to get photocopied.
True.
Right? You have to be very wary of that. You have to be absolutely aware of the quicker I go to the market, the better it is, because I stand a chance of getting replicated very quickly. Every successful idea has been copied at least 5 times in this country. Okay, whether they became more successful or were not able to sustain is another story altogether. But these are two issues I see a lot more than others.
and it's also said like, an idea is just an idea until it is executed. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. And of course, I'm like, if you and me start talking about something, like we're talking, there could be a possibility while talking, कोई एक नया idea निकल कर आएगा, right? And I also think that execution is the biggest problem. लोग सोच तो बहुत बड़ा लेते हैं. Most of the people are very get reserved or maybe get restricted by the fact that they don't know how to execute it. And second is they're always waiting कि जब मेरे पास सारे tools आ जाएंगे तब मैं उसको launch करूँगा. So what do you recommend in both the scenarios? Ki wait for the tools and right time to launch it?
Chicken and egg story. Hard question to answer. Yes, you need all the tools.
True.
To make a successful business. Whether it's your tools can mean investments. If you're lucky, you have a family that can invest in your business, or friends and family around jo bolte hai.
Correct.
Or anyone who's buying into your idea. Then you need the team, obviously. The ideas, the office space, everything. But you might be running against the tide there. That idea might be getting implemented somewhere else, and it comes out and you're like, oh, मैंने भी सोचा था. But वो सोचने से आप पैसा नहीं कमाओगे.
True.
The money will come out of actually executing. So if you were to make money out of just ideas, all of us would be billionaires, right? I mean,
True.
everyone thinks of what can you execute? What tools do you have available? And how quickly can you make them available? Right time आपको बनाना पड़ता है, बनता नहीं है अपने आप. You have to start putting all the pieces together by yourself, and that's where a business starts growing.
Because we've spoken a lot about startup and of course the founders you meet on day-to-day basis. Let's talk about the national versus international thing, right? India versus global. So what do you see a difference in a founder from an Indian origin or from a XYZ origin, non-Indian? So what do you see a difference if you have come across? Or startup market?
See, most founders are, the word hustle is in the DNA of most founders in this country. To the extent that sometimes they don't focus enough on creating that structure that will cushion their business in the future. Internationally, Again, I'm not stereotyping both. When you're saying international, you're obviously talking about the more developed countries. Obviously, that's where the comparison is going. I think they believe in creating structure. So right in the beginning, their documents, etc., their PPTs, their compliance, everything is intact from day one. That's a little, in India, businesses start first and then all those things happen. They start believing that they can run a business, they can do sales from day one. They hustle a lot more. So hustle takes priority in India, then structure. Largely, again, there are obviously exceptions. I think internationally, in the developed countries, structure takes more priority, and then obviously there is hustle there as well. There's nothing without hustle.
So let's talk about the startup culture. We're all talking about startup culture in India, right? But as compared to international market, we lay our emphasis, or our focus is more on the hustle part of it than the structure part of it. Maybe I'm not exactly true, but mostly, generally, let's say. So what's your take on it, and what should we do?
Focus on your own country's culture first of all.
Yeah.
Hustle's important.
Yeah.
Hustling like a गधे की तरह नहीं, घोड़े की तरह हसल करो. सही डायरेक्शन पे हसल करना बहुत जरूरी है. I mean, again, it's 1.4 billion people. For every person who's executing an idea, there are probably 100 people who are also executing it in some other corner of the country. That's the power of startups in this country today. And that's the belief in the startup system today. So you have to hustle. You think you're just going to be in that one room and opportunities are going to fly to you. That's never going to happen. You have to make your business visible. To make your business visible, to make sure you call the shots, to make sure you get the tech together, to make sure all the pieces come together, hustle is important. I don't think it's glorified, it's necessary. I don't know of too many founders who haven't gone through a hustle to build the initial stages of their business. Once the structuring is done, once a firm structure is in place, once the machine's running well, I think that's where you can be a little more strategic. And you can pick and choose battles. उससे पहले तो आपको भागना ही पड़ेगा.
So it's like on a battleground, and you're a general. You're marching with your troops.
The troops will hustle, right?
Will hustle, yeah.
The troops will hustle. When you're a general, you call the shots. When you tell the troops to hustle. Absolutely, to your point, you can compare it. In the beginning, there is no. You cannot replace hustle with anything else. Yes, as strategic as possible. Meet the right set of people. Put the right pieces together. Prioritize well. All those things are important.
While we're hustling, okay, and this culture is very important. But I've also not seen as a first hand, but I've seen in general small businesses also, MSME and everything, which is also in a way starts as a startup and then maybe become a unicorn someday. The ego comes in. And people sometimes, their ego is much bigger than their own brainchild or their idea. How do young entrepreneurs should tackle with that?
They should be able to distinguish between ego and self-respect. Ego comes into every founder. It's not like it's not coming to me. It would have been a part of everyone's life. Sometimes you're waiting for a client. You might be waiting outside their office for 3 hours. You can choose your ego to come in or your self-respect to come in and say, I'm not going to wait. Well, you've lost the opportunity then. That person's not knocking at your doors. You are knocking at their doors. Ego in certain cases is allowed, but at a certain stage where you can be, you can call the shots. You can say, look, my time is limited. Again, it all comes down to at what stage of growth you're at. At an early stage, if you're egoistic, you're most likely going to drain that business out. Just out of your egos. मैं इसके साथ धंधा नहीं करूँगा. उसने मेरे को ये बोल दिया. Find a way. I've done it. Most founders have done it. I didn't want to work with people because I didn't like them. In hindsight, I think that is perhaps one of the worst ideologies I had. But I found a way. In certain cases, a lot of my clients, I wish they got replaced or promoted and I didn't have to deal with them. But I found a way. You slowly become patient with age. Oh क्या गरम खून भी थोड़ा
उबाल मारता है. Yes, you're right. Again, and then let's say when you're comparing India versus international market, right? The startup tech feeling. So, is there any cultural habit you think we should adopt in our startup ecosystem?
No,
I know we have to run our business on our nation's
yeah,
culture, but still.
I think it's that when I've resisted name dropping, but let's say Uber. When they came into India, they expected people to not pay through cash. This was a cash. I think 2012 is when they started, or 11 approximately. Then they didn't have pay by cash as an option. They quickly realized that you have to pay via cash in this country. You have to allow that ecosystem to exist on your app. And then people started booking through Uber. When McDonald's came, and they obviously always localized, right? Maharaja Mac,
Yes.
Mac Arabia.
Correct.
So when you want to go international, you adapt to the culture then. When I spoke about me going into Singapore, I had to localize because I wanted to work in that country. A lot of those practices will fail over here, and a lot of practices from here will fail over there. So you have to localize in the country you want to do business in. It's as simple as that. So eventually we were celebrating Chinese New Year just as much as Diwali, just because we wanted the attention of the Singapore people as well. As a team, basically, we needed to, so we were celebrating festivals of other countries also. And they, while you're always celebrating Diwali, but because we were working in Singapore, it became very important for us to also celebrate festivals of the other countries, localize,
Makes sense.
to understand. For example, these are periods where people will not be available. Customers might not be available because it's Chinese New Year. Over here, around Diwali, it gets difficult to get their attention. Upcoming Ganesh Chaturthi, I know a lot of, and I work a lot in Bombay. I have a lot of clients in Bombay. I know it's difficult to get their attention at that point. So over the years, I've realized that's a point where I don't really travel to Bombay and post that. So you start understanding that about each region you're in. So you have to localize. Your business has to localize when you go into that country. I don't necessarily feel you need to bring those practices to your country. Of, let's say, in सिंगापुर ऐसे काम करते तो हम भी ऐसे काम नहीं चलेगा. सिंगापुर 6 बजे छुट्टी दे देता है, जाओ, एंड पीपल विल नॉट रिस्पॉन्ड टू देयर फोन्स. यहाँ पे 10 बजे भी बॉस मैसेज करेगा, आपको जवाब देना पड़ेगा.
करेक्ट.
और सिंगापुर में नहीं दो तो अगले दिन यू आर नॉट गोना गेट एन लाइक अ माउथ फुल फ्रॉम योर बॉस. रात को 10 बजे मैसेज किया, क्यों नहीं रिप्लाई किया. दे अंडरस्टैंड. पहली बात तो 10 बजे मैसेज ही नहीं आएगा. आएगा भी तो इट्स नॉट एक्सपेक्टेड फॉर यू टू आंसर दैट, राइट? सो that culture will never work. All the countries have a culture that they built over the years, over the centuries, and it'll only work for them, right? So I don't necessarily feel we understand good practices, no harm, but yes, localize as much as possible.
I mean, that makes sense also, right? Eventually, like you said, Bombay वाला example, festival season चल रहा है, वहाँ पे client का पूरा energy पूरा family पे है, festival पे है, तो आप जाके उसके आपने जितना मर्जी पिच करो या कोई भी बात करो या उसको कुछ आइडिया भी दो, वो बोलेगा बॉस इस पीरियड के बाद विल पिक इट फ्रॉम देयर, राइट?
आप भी तो बिजी होगे उस टाइम पे. फेस्टिवल सीजन है. इफ यू डोंट वांट टू टॉक बिजनेस एट दैट पॉइंट, दैट्स द टाइम यू वांट टू स्पेंड विद योर नियर एंड डियर वंस.
करेक्ट.
दूसरी क्लाइंट भी तो इंसान ही है.
We need to understand the psychic. Yeah. Makes sense. So I'm like, of course, we've spoken about India versus global culture, right? There's one aspect which I really wanted to speak to you about, is like something about failure or power of failure or learnings from your failure. I know you're a big advocate of it. You lay very special emphasis to it, and I think मुझे लगता है failure एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो सिर्फ आपकी है. Success सबका हो सकता है, but failure सिर्फ आपका है, right? So share your understanding of, like, your thought process behind it, please.
See, failure में problem नहीं है. Failure से जो inadequate आप feel करते हो, I think that is a bigger problem. Not the moment, but the inadequacy that comes with it. It becomes a problem. Now, this is an era of social media. Everyone seems successful and everyone seems beautiful, handsome, whatever, right? Everyone's putting their best pictures out there, is talking about their promotions, is talking about I've raised capital, only talking about the good stories. It can make you feel inadequate, right? It can make you feel mere lavana, especially if you're going through a lull, if you're going through one of those down phases जो सबकी life में आते हैं. At that point you can feel very inadequate. So obviously it's too much to ask for people to start putting on their LinkedIn, oh, I got fired today, or I had to lay off 50 people because my business is not doing well. You're not going to see that kind of news. But there have to be enough people talking about the fact that this happens in businesses. Everyone is going to, it makes it easier when you know there are more people going through it. So you feel less lonely.
True.
Right? When we spoke about COVID earlier, and I told you it's lonely at the top, perhaps at that point, yes, people weren't really meeting in person. Perhaps at that point, if there were forums for founders to just talk about this is what I'm going through as a CEO of a company, it would have made it easier for everyone. A support system of sorts that comes up in so many walks of life today. A lot of people who are running marathons today, they say it's easier when you're running with 30, 40 people rather than when you're running alone.
Agreed.
It's the same philosophy, right? You need to know you're not the only one that's going through this. So, you start feeling a little bit inadequate. And नौकरी चली गई. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it was your boss. And a lot of people are going through it. The best of people have gone through down phases. More and more people, I wish, came out and spoke about it. No good story was made without failures and setbacks. No good story was made without failures and setbacks.
Don't you think it's a moral responsibility for all the founders or the people who have done it now, right? Who have achieved something, because people would want to listen to them, of course, right?
Moral responsibility, no. I mean, it would be a good thing if people spoke about it a lot more. Yes. Founders eventually go and speak to, they go give talks in colleges, so many channels to interact with budding founders or people out of B schools right now. It'd be good if someone spoke about it more, or more people spoke about it rather. For you to understand that this is going to happen. It just prepares you better.
Of course, I'm like, when you're struggling alone, right? And you're afraid to speak about it. I mean, generally, this is the inhibition, right? सबके साथ ये होता है ना कि मैं बोलूँगा तो लोग मेरे बारे में क्या सोचेंगे? What image I'm portraying? Maybe my next connection won't see me in the same light.
Yeah, too many of us are worried about दुनिया क्या कहेगी,
हाँ,
right?
लोग क्या कहेंगे?
So no one, it's very hard for people to go admit failure. And look, you understand, it's so competitive out there, right? We live in India, we're having this talk within this country itself. And there are so many people to replace that one person who's working. Next day there can be 10 replacements available. The
Easily.
HR will take this long to get a replacement. I think you can, in that moment, feel very inadequate if you're laid off, or your boss shouted at you, or no one's willing to invest in your idea. No one's, your business is turning red completely. That your entire balance sheet's not looking good anymore. You can start feeling inadequate, but it's happened to the best of us.
But then again, I think it has happened to best of you guys, and it has happened with me also, right? So I personally feel like you just have to see through the storm, right? And like just navigate those deep waters, and then eventually things fall back on track.
Not
right?
for everyone. Some people probably thought that way, and their losses just kept extending. right? Sometimes it's important to understand
cut
and
your
cut your
losses.
losses also, to know that, look, this story is going nowhere. For example, if you're just pulling through an employment stint because, well, you need the money, but if it's giving you mental harassment, is it worth it? Is it not? It's on everyone's circumstances. You got to understand your own circumstances.
True.
Take a call. There are a lot of people who, sometimes when you take a cab from the airport at 2 at night, where the whole 90% of the world is sleeping, these people are driving cabs. They don't want to be driving at night when everyone's sleeping.
Correct.
कोई मजबूरी होगी. So they don't have an option to be like, oh, look, this is causing me this harassment. They probably only got a cab that they can drive at night, and the night shift is the only one they can do to make that money. What do? It's their circumstances at the end of the day.
But then when you say cutting off losses, don't you think most of the founders who fall into this trap of of going on with an idea, just इज्जत बना लेते हैं उसको शायद, maybe, right? Or maybe it's a wishful thinking.
बाद में तो बाहर आ ही जाता है.
हाँ, true.
Right? अगर a founder kept extending it and went into the red, I mean, you've had airlines shut down because of that.
Correct.
You had so many businesses shut down because they didn't stop. आप बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हैं. इज्जत बन जाती है. You don't want to tell the world that, look, I started a business and it shut down. First it was hard for me to convince people that I want to do this business. Now it's even harder for me to tell you that, look, it didn't work out. Right? I think, and obviously with so much social media, everything is magnified so much.
True.
Especially failures. Everyone is out there to magnify that failure. Yeah.
अब आजकल सोशल मीडिया में you're absolutely correct. I mean, what I'm seeing is they only show breakthroughs, breakdown नहीं दिखाते किसी का. Right? मतलब
breakdowns कम लोग दिखाते हैं तो वो I mean they obviously harp on breakdowns, especially I've seen in the news, they see a successful company go a little here and there, they'll focus on it, but yes, more glorified stories. Obviously, that's also, a lot of it is also paid PR, right? Where people are glorifying their stories more and more. बाद में, there are, again, if it's a hollow story, it'll come out. At some point, it will come out.
But then again, the entire media, entire mindset, or maybe the mindset of the entire audience has become is this way that they pick on the negatives very quickly, right? I'm like you said, no, overnight sensation बना देंगे आपको, कुछ आपको छोटा सा भी गलत कर दो, one misstep, and with no fault of yours, and it just goes haywire.
Cricket's the biggest example, right?
Yeah.
You're only as good as your last, or as good as bad as your last series. I mean, with all these Indian cricketers that they can become heroes overnight, or they can become the biggest villains where people want to throw stones in them. Again, businesses are like that. Not so long back, there was this cab company. I'm not going to name it, but everyone knows which one I'm talking about. Everyone thought that was the best thing that happened to this city. And then so much came out. And then there was more about it in the media. The negatives were more out there in the media. Social media, everyone was talking about it. So you pay a price for being popular. The negatives will get called out. You look at all these celebrities, they have to look good each time they're walking out, wear something different each time they're walking out. Otherwise, news में आ जाएगा, ये तो 3 दिन पहले यही कपड़े पहने, right? So you have to pay the more your business grows, the more you'll always be in the limelight. More and more people will talk about you, your actions. Let's say an IPO has already happened in your company. Every action that you take can have a repercussion. So then the news, the media has to be handled accordingly.
So all right, Vikul, I'm like, this is wonderful. I'm like, I've learned so much, and I'm hoping जिसने भी podcast सुनने वाला होगा, they will learn something out of it. So let's just shake things up a little bit, kind of. We'll talk to you about certain things. You can tell me whether it's a myth or truth. And
In
then
my
we'll go
opinion.
In your opinion, of
In my
course.
opinion, yeah.
We have to give a disclaimer, everything, right? These
Absolutely.
days. And then we'll talk about some rapid fire where you can elaborate if you would like, or if you want to give a one word answer, that will work too.
Okay. Where's my hamper?
I'm sorry, we'll be getting there soon. The founder should always raise external funding.
Situational. Most B2C companies at a certain stage to make enough noise to get enough customers, beat the queue, will need external funding. But yeah,
So it's neither a myth, it's not a truth, it's
I would say it's situational.
situational.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Another thing is you must always have a co-founder to succeed.
No, but a extremely strong support system to succeed. Yes, especially to cater to your weaknesses as a founder.
Which we talked about also. Right?
Yes,
So work-life balance is a myth in startups.
work becomes your life. It's not a myth.
Very nicely put.
Work becomes your life.
So there's it's a truth.
Yes.
Work becomes your life. Okay. So startup success is 90% timing.
Timing, yes, 90%, but the remaining 10% is very important. What step you take into that door, you put the right step in, is as important as the timing. So, yes, if the timing is correct, you have the right business. But I mean, what you make of that opportunity is everything.
Okay. So formal education is overrated for entrepreneurs.
बाद में लगने लगता है. But you know, I honestly, I had this discussion with someone else a week back. If you're from a good B school or say an IIT or any of these tech schools also, the network will also help you. You know, a lot of founders today have this network. You know, they came from an IIT or an IIM, they met at a Harvard, and then that network helps you. So more than the education, sometimes the network that you have in these all these educational institutes can help you a lot.
So in a way, I'm like,
It's not everything, yes, but I think it's important. It network helps you. It can fasten up the whole process.
yeah, or you're a fast track then.
Yes.
Right? Okay, perfect. So now we're gonna do it. It's kind of I call it a rapid fire, but yes,
Sure.
please don't overthink. But yeah, of course, be quirky or be whatever how you feel. So first app you check in the morning.
A news app.
Okay.
A news app. It can. I mean, it can be NET. It can be a TOI. Usually, it's a news app.
Okay. One person who has deeply influenced your mindset.
Well, it'll be wrong for me to name one person. At different stages, I've had
Of
the
course.
right people coming into my life. But one person's life story that's influenced me most is Bhagat Singh.
Okay.
I think his audacity to take on the might of
The
a huge
British
army,
Empire. Yeah.
the entire empire,
Yeah.
I've always admired.
Nice. So this is for my own knowledge. Whiskey or squash? What wins on a Saturday?
Whiskey after squash.
Okay, so I know where to find you on a squash court in the morning and evening. Okay, perfect. A mistake every founder must make once.
Believing he's enough by himself.
So if not an entrepreneur, you would be.
My mother, when I was bad at a few bad grades would come around, told me that "Tu chai wala banega." Chai wala succeed a lot these days. My grandfather, because I played a few good shots in the backyard, thought I will represent the Indian team. None of that was going to ever happen. I think I would have been a very grumpy employee, very grumpy employee. So all organizations that I never joined should be very thankful I became an entrepreneur.
I'm thinking in all the organizations you worked at, if they're looking into this, they would say, "Oh, what a loss! What a loss!" but thank you for answering everything so candidly, and of course, this is the most authentic part. What I feel like the truth comes out, right?
Yeah.
Eventually. Perfect. Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is one of the most important part or favorite part of my show, right? As you know, my name of my show is Addicted. So I would just want to know what is one thing or what are you addicted to right now? It can be a ritual, an idea, a guilty pleasure, or something you don't even fully understand yet.
Just to make things happen. I mean, that's been my addiction for a while.
Okay.
I'm very restless as a soul. I need to be out there. I need to keep. I mean, it's important for my survival to keep making things happen. Whether it's in my personal life, professional life, I'm always trying to make something happen. So, we spoke about squash. You've obviously researched me enough. Uh, uh, Lately, I've just been addicted to going and playing tournaments and trying to get somewhere in the national ranking also at my category, obviously. So, at the beginning of the show, you asked me what's Vikul Chander all about. So someone who's very passionate about anything he commits himself to. And I think that will always be me. I cannot do anything half-heartedly. I'd rather not do it. So I continue to be someone who's addicted to making life happen for myself.
I know it was not something which I was planning on doing it, but then it just came to my head कि अगर आपको कोई एक advice देना हो जो भी हमारी audience है जो यहाँ पे सुन रही है और जो भी सुनेंगे future में तो क्या होगी?
Understand your circumstances. Don't get swayed by what you're seeing in and around. If you know, in terms of what investments can you garner, uh, what are the tools that you have at your disposal, your ideas, how quickly can it be replicated, what is the scale you can go at, how many employees can you get. Understand your circumstances very well and be very real with yourself. I think I've said that enough times.
Correct.
It is such a it is such an underrated thing. The founder has to be real with himself. I think the one advice I would keep giving them is understand your situation and function accordingly. Try and not get distracted by what's happening around you. Yes, keep an eye out on the competition. I'm not discarding that. But if someone's raised $500 million and the whole country what is stoked about it, don't worry. Just stay humble, work within your limitations, your circumstances, and believe in yourself.
Wow, this is so profound. Thank you, Vikul, for today. I'm like, honestly, I have learned a lot. And then sometimes, the biggest mistake we do is we're trying to understand the world more and trying to make sense out of it rather than understanding our own selves, right?
Yes, very few people spend time understanding themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for doing this today.
Pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all
Thank
mine.
you.
Thank you for having me.
So, all right, everyone. So, this conversation was a rare one. Vikul didn't come with a pitch, he came with a perspective. We live in a time where everyone wants to be seen as successful. But what we need more of are people like you who are willing to say, hey, it was hard, I failed, I evolved, and I'm still building. To everyone listening, you're allowed to be messy, you're allowed to take your time, and you're definitely allowed to redefine what success looks like. Because as Vikul reminded us today, the version of yourself that worked yesterday might not survive tomorrow. And that is not a crisis, it's a growth. Thanks for tuning into the Addicted Show. Until next time, keep building, stay curious, stay grounded, and as always, stay more addicted.